The collision the first time Nikolai Vassiliev entered Sweet Roots Bakery. The tiny bell above the door barely had time to chime before he was barking orders into his phone. At 37, the Russian-German tech mogul had perfected the art of intimidation, sharp charcoal suit, perpetually furrowed brow, and a voice that could freeze boiling water. "I don't care what the board thinks," he snapped in flawless German. "The acquisition happens tomorrow, or not at all." Behind the counter, Dahlia Okafor glanced up from the delicate sugar flowers she was placing on a wedding cake. The Nigerian-German pastry chef had built her reputation on two things: extraordinary desserts and an equally extraordinary ability to make anyone feel welcome. But the scowling man dripping rainwater onto her freshly mopped floors was testing even her legendary patience. "I'll be with you in a moment," she called, her voice warm despite her irritation. The stranger didn't acknowledge her, continuing his tirade. 40 million is the cap. Their technology isn't worth a cent more. He paced the small space, expensive shoes squeaking against the tile. Dahlia finished the sugar violet in her hands, placed it carefully, and wiped her fingers on her apron. Her small bakery in Kreuzberg had become a neighborhood, an institution over the past 3 years, a sanctuary of warmth and sweetness in Berlin's often gray cityscape. "Welcome to Sweet Roots," she said, approaching the counter. "What can I get for you today?" The man lowered his phone slightly, revealing stormy blue eyes. "Black coffee, to go." Dahlia raised an eyebrow. "I'm afraid we don't serve just coffee here. There's a chain place around the corner if that's all you want." This finally got his full attention. He ended his call abruptly and stared at her as if she'd suggested he'd fly to the moon on a unicycle. "You're refusing to sell me coffee? I'm redirecting you to somewhere more suitable for your needs," Dahlia replied, gesturing to the glass cases filled with pastries. "Sweet Roots is known for our baked goods. Coffee is complimentary with a purchase." The man's jaw tightened. "Right. Fine. Give me whatever's fastest." "That would be prepackaged disappointment, which I don't sell." Dahlia crossed her arms. "Look, Mr. Vassiliev, Nikolai Vassiliev." The name registered immediately. Everyone in Berlin knew Neural Sphere and its notoriously difficult founder. The winter wolf of tech, the papers called him. "Mr. Vassiliev, you've clearly had a rough morning. But that doesn't mean mine needs to be rough too. So either order something properly, or please visit that chain store." For a moment, he looked, genuinely shocked. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but something close to respect. "What do you recommend, then?" His tone had lost its edge. Dahlia studied him. "You look like a man who appreciates precision. Try the dark chocolate tart with sea salt, and our Ethiopian pour-over." Nikolai nodded curtly. "Fine." As Dahlia prepared his order, she noticed him studying her bakery, the hand-painted walls, the mismatched vintage chairs, the photos of her grandmother in Lagos teaching a young Dahlia to bake. When she returned with his food, he'd already received another call. But this time, he silenced the phone. "Sit," Dahlia commanded, placing the tart before him. 5 minutes. The rain's getting worse anyway. Surprisingly, he did. And when he took his first bite, something almost human flickered across his face. "This is unexpected," he said quietly. Dahlia smiled. "Most good things are, Mr. Vassiliev." Whisked together 3 weeks after their first encounter, Nikolai's sleek black car was parked outside Sweet Roots every Tuesday and Thursday morning like clockwork. The staff had begun to anticipate his arrival, straightening when the bell chimed. At precisely 8:15 a.m., "The usual, Mr. Vassiliev?" Dahlia asked, already reaching for the dark chocolate tart. Today she wore a yellow headscarf that brightened the entire shop. "Yes, but I'll stay this time." His voice remained clipped, but the glacial edge had thawed slightly. "Business meeting?" she asked, noting his pristine suit. "No." He didn't elaborate, simply choosing the table by the window, the one with the best view of her working at the counter. Dahlia brought over his tart and coffee, curiosity finally getting the better of her. "You know, most billionaires don't have time to visit the same bakery twice a week," Most billionaires don't have a palate refined enough to appreciate what you create. He sipped his coffee, eyes never leaving her face. Your cacao is single origin from Ghana. The butter is French, but the technique that's something else entirely. No, Dahlia blinked in surprise. You can taste all that? I've traveled extensively. Food is one of the few consistent pleasures in life. He gestured to the chair opposite him. Join me. I have customers. You have two elderly ladies gossiping over strudel, and a student who hasn't looked up from his laptop in 30 minutes. You can spare 5 minutes. Dahlia hesitated, then sat. Why do you really keep coming back, Mr. Vasiliev? Nikolai, he corrected, and I'm not entirely sure. Something vulnerable flashed across his face before disappearing behind his usual mask of indifference. Your bakery is... anomalous. Most people would just say nice or charming. Not most people. He took another bite of tart. Your business model is inefficient. Could be making triple your current revenue with proper expansion. Dahlia laughed. Of course you'd see it that way. Not everything needs to be scaled up, you know. Growth is survival. Balance is survival, she countered. My grandmother built her first bakery in Lagos with just enough room for the community. To gather, too big, and you lose the soul. Something in her words seemed to strike him. My grandmother was also stubborn about tradition, he said quietly. She made black bread every Sunday in our kitchen in St. Petersburg, no matter how busy. This small, unexpected glimpse into his life felt more precious than it should have. The following weeks developed a rhythm. Nikolai would arrive, they would talk for exactly 20 minutes, and then he would leave. But not before ordering something to take with him. Sometimes he asked questions about her Nigerian heritage, her culinary training in Paris, or her decision to open a bakery in Berlin. Other times he shared fragments of his own story, his childhood in Russia, his education in Germany, the early days of building Neuralsphere from nothing. One rainy afternoon in April, Nikolai arrived unexpectedly. Dahlia was closing early, frustrated after her delivery van had broken down. This isn't a good time, she said, wiping flour from her brow. I brought something. He held up a small toolbox. For your delivery van. I heard you telling the flower shop owner about it this morning. You're going to fix my van? In that suit? Without responding? Nikolai removed his jacket, rolled up the sleeves of his crisp white shirt, and walked toward the back alley where her vintage Volkswagen was parked. 3 hours later, they sat on the bakery floor sharing a bottle of wine and the day's unsold pastries. Where does a tech CEO learn to fix engines? Dahlia asked, licking custard from her fingers. My father was a mechanic before we left Russia. It was the only time he wasn't angry, when he was fixing things. Nikolai's voice softened. What about you? Who taught you to bake like this? My grandmother. After my parents died, her kitchen became my safe place. Their eyes met. Recognition passing between them, the understanding that they'd both built their lives around the things that once saved them. When his phone rang, Nikolai did something Dahlia had never seen before. He turned it off completely. Tell me more about Lagos, he said instead. And for the first time since she'd known him, Nikolai Vasiliev was fully present. No distractions, no walls. Just listening as if her words were the most valuable data he'd ever collected. Rising tensions, the photograph appeared in Berlin's most notorious tabloid on a crisp May morning. Nikolai holding the door of Sweet Roots open for Dahlia, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. The headline screamed, Winter Wolf. Tamed tech titan's secret romance with local baker. Dahlia discovered it when a flood of unfamiliar customers began arriving, smartphones in hand, more interested in catching a glimpse of Nikolai's baker girlfriend than actually buying anything. Is he really as cold as they say? How did you two meet? Are those engagement rumors true? By noon, she'd locked the front door and flipped the sign to closed, sinking down against the wall of her kitchen as her phone buzzed incessantly, with notifications and calls from unknown numbers. When Nikolai arrived, his face was a storm cloud. Pack a bag, he said without preamble. My security team says 3 paparazzi are already staking out your apartment building. I'm not going anywhere, Dahlia replied, steel in her voice despite her exhaustion. This is my business, My home. It's not safe. They'll hound you without mercy. They've done it to everyone I've ever been associated with. His jaw tightened. I have a secure residence outside the city, just until this blows over. And how long will that be? Days? Weeks? Sweet Roots. I'll hire staff to maintain operations. The financial loss will be covered. Dahlia stood, anger flaring. It's not about money. You can't just throw cash at every problem, Nikolai. And what do you suggest? His voice rose. 'Cause this, he gestured between them, has put a target on your back. My last girlfriend had to leave the country after the media harassment. Word girlfriend hung in the air between them. They'd never defined what they were to each other, dancing around the growing intimacy for weeks. I never asked for your protection, Dahlia said quietly. You didn't have to. Its expression softened. Fractionally, Dahlia. These people destroyed my brother's marriage. Their harassment contributed to his depression. He stopped abruptly, turning away. Dahlia's anger deflated. His suicide, she finished gently. You've never said his name to me. Victor, the word sounded like it physically hurt to pronounce. He was the better of us, the kind one. She approached him slowly. I'm sorry about the media, but I won't be chased for my life, Nikolai. His phone rang, his PR team with the latest crisis updates. As he took the call, Dahlia watched his walls rebuilding in real time, the vulnerable man disappearing behind the business mask. The next week was chaos. Porters ambushed Dahlia at farmers markets where she sourced ingredients. Online reviews for Sweet Roots became polluted with fake one-star ratings and speculation about her relationship. Meanwhile, Nikolai seemed to retreat further with each passing day, their conversations growing shorter, more formal. The breaking point came when a particularly aggressive photographer followed Dahlia to her grandmother's grave on the anniversary of her death. That evening, she arrived at Nikolai's penthouse unannounced, rain-soaked and furious. His assistant tried to stop her, but she pushed past into his home office, where he sat surrounded by screens displaying Neurosphere's latest crises. Stock dip following rumors that he was distracted by romance. This has to stop, she said. Nikolai looked up, surprise briefly registering before his expression closed again. I'm in the middle of something important. So am I. My life is falling apart because of us, whatever us is. She placed a tabloid on his desk, a particularly vicious article suggesting she was using him for investment money. They're destroying my reputation, everything I've built. His eyes darkened as he scanned the article. I told you we should have handled this my way? By hiding? By pretending we don't care about each other? Dahlia's voice cracked. 'Cause we do, don't we? Care? The silence stretched between them, weighted with everything unsaid. Finally, Nikolai stood, his expression unreadable. I care enough to know you deserve better than this. It's better than me and the chaos I bring. That's not your decision to make alone. It is when I've seen this pattern destroy everyone I've ever. He stopped, swallowing hard. Ever what? Dahlia challenged, stepping closer. Instead of answering, he turned away, his voice clinical when he finally spoke. I'll have my team issue a statement denying any relationship. They can say you're just my baker. The interest will fade, just your baker. Dahlia repeated, the words hollow. Is that all I am to you? When he didn't answer, she nodded slowly, tears threatening. I thought you were different when you were with me. I thought I saw the real Nikolai. But maybe this is who you really are, someone who runs when things get complicated. She left without waiting for his response, the door closing with quiet finality behind her. The fallout 2 weeks passed without a word from Nikolai. True to his promise, his PR team had released a statement dismissing the relationship rumors. Interest in Dahlia gradually waned, but the damage lingered, a persistent emptiness that made even her beloved bakery feel hollow. On a particularly slow Tuesday morning, Dahlia found herself unconsciously glancing at the door at 8:15, still half expecting the bell to chime and Nikolai to walk in. Instead, her assistant Amani appeared. From the back room with a letter. This came by courier, she said, handing over a heavy cream envelope embossed with the Neurosphere. Logo. Inside was a formal invitation to the grand opening of the Neurosphere Innovation Campus, a massive technology center Nikolai had been developing for years. Along with it was a handwritten note. Your presence is requested. Envy, not I miss you. Not I'm sorry. Just a summons. As if she were any other business acquaintance. Dahlia almost threw it away. But something curiosity, stubbornness, or the traitorous hope still flickering in her chest made her set it aside instead. The night of the event arrived, and against her better judgment, Dahlia found herself in a taxi heading toward the gleaming new campus on Berlin's outskirts. She'd chosen a simple emerald dress that complemented her dark skin. Her usual colorful headscarf traded for a more subdued gold one. The innovation campus was exactly what she'd expected from Nikolai Sleck, imposing and impressive. Hundreds of Berlin's elite mingled beneath soaring glass ceilings, champagne flowing freely as tech demonstrations showcased neural spheres. Latest breakthroughs? She spotted him immediately, the still point in the swirling crowd. Nikolai stood on a raised platform, engaged in conversation with several important-looking investors, yet somehow his eyes found hers the moment she entered. For a breath, his mask slipped, raw emotion flashing across his face before the composed CEO returned. He excused himself from his group and made his way toward her, the crowd unconsciously parting before him. You came, he said simply when he reached her. I'm still trying to figure out why you invited me, Dahlia replied. He gestured toward a private elevator. There's something I need to show you. Curiosity overcoming caution, she followed him. The elevator ascended to the top floor, opening onto a roof garden, stark contrast to the minimalist building below. Fragrant herbs grew in perfectly arranged beds, and in the center sat a small, fully equipped kitchen, surrounding an intimate dining area. What is this? Dahlia asked, running her fingers over the marble countertop. A mistake, Nikolai said quietly. One of many I've made recently. She turned to him, confused. Designed this space for you, he continued. A place where you could develop recipes, host private dinners, whatever you wanted. I had this idea that you could be part of my world without sacrificing yours. When did you do this? Started it the week after we met. Finished it 3 days before that first photograph appeared in the tabloids. His gaze was direct now, vulnerable in a way she'd rarely seen. And then I convinced myself it was better to push you away than risk you being hurt. The way Victor was hurt, Dahlia said softly. Nikolai nodded, his composure slipping. 5 years, and I still can't forgive myself for not protecting him better. Oh. So instead, you decided to protect me by making me miserable. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. When you put it that way, the logic seems flawed. Severely, Dahlia crossed her arms. Why am I really here, Nikolai? He took a deep breath, because I realized something after you left. My entire life, I've built walls and systems to control every variable. But you are the one variable I can't control, can't predict. His voice roughened. And somehow, that's the most terrifying and exhilarating thing I've ever experienced. That's not an answer. I'm in love with you, he said simply. I have absolutely no idea what to do about it. The words hung between them, honest and unadorned. Dahlia felt tears threatening. You hurt me, I know, and this grand gesture doesn't fix that. I know that too. He moved closer, stopping just short of touching her. I'm not asking for forgiveness yet, just a chance to earn it. How? His answer surprised her. By letting you set the terms. All of them. No more unilateral decisions about what's best for you. Dahlia studied him, the man who controlled one of Europe's most powerful companies. Offering her the one thing he'd never willingly given anyone, control. I need time, she finally said. And if we try again, it happens in the open. Number 6. Hiding, no PR statements. It's just us, figuring it out together, machines and all. Nikolai nodded, relief evident in the slight relaxation of his shoulders. Anything else? A small smile tugged at her lips. Yes, you need to learn how to bake. For the first time since she'd known him, Nikolai Vasilov laughed a full, genuine sound that transformed his entire face. That seems like a reasonable demand. As the city lights twinkled below them, they stood together in the garden heat. Built for her, the first fragile bridge extending across the space between their worlds. A new blend, 6 months later. The bell above Sweet Root's door chimed at precisely 6 a.m. Nikolai entered with his own key, removing his coat and immediately washing his hands at the sink. Jeans and a simple sweater. He moved with the confidence of someone who belonged there, preheating ovens and setting out mixing bowls with practiced ease. "You're early," Dahlia said, emerging from the back room with bags of premium flour. She greeted him with a kiss that still made his breath catch. "Board meeting was canceled. Thought I'd get a head start on the cardamom buns." His accent had softened these past months, his words coming more easily. Dahlia watched him measuring ingredients with scientific precision, still using the digital scale for everything. "Baking is chemistry," he replied seriously. "Precision matters." "Baking is feeling," she countered, coming behind him to wrap her arms around his waist. "You can't measure soul." Their gentle argument was a familiar dance now, one that made them both smile. Sweet Roots had transformed since they decided to blend their worlds. The original location remained intimate, and unchanged. Dahlia had insisted on preserving its character, but a second, larger space had opened across town. The new location featured both Dahlia's traditional recipes and an innovative fusion menu they developed together. Combining her Nigerian heritage with elements of Nikolai's Russian background, most surprising to everyone was Nikolai's gradual step back from Neurosphere's daily operations. He remained chairman of the board but had appointed a CEO to handle day-to-day management, freeing him to spend mornings at the bakery and afternoons developing a foundation supporting refugee culinary entrepreneurs, inspired by Dahlia's grandmothers. Journey decades earlier, the media had eventually tired of their story when it became clear that neither would play the expected roles. She hadn't transformed into a socialite, and he hadn't fully abandoned his business. Instead, they'd created something new together, something that honored both their strengths as the morning sunlight filtered through the windows. They worked side by side in comfortable silence, Nikolai occasionally stealing glances at Dahlia, as she hummed while piping delicate designs on wedding cookies. "I have something for you," he said eventually, reaching into his pocket. He placed a small, worn notebook on the counter between them. Dahlia recognized it immediately, the handwritten recipe collection from his grandmother that he'd mentioned but never shown her. "Nikolai," she whispered, understanding the significance. "Are you sure?" he nodded. "I thought perhaps we could try making her black bread this Sunday, together." The simple suggestion contained multitudes, an invitation to another piece of his past, a commitment to their shared future, the merging of their separate histories. Later that evening, after both bakeries had closed, they sat on the rooftop. Garden of the Innovation Campus, now transformed into a living laboratory where Dahlia experimented with growing rare herbs and spices from around the world. "I got another acquisition offer for Sweet Roots today," she mentioned, curled against him on the bench they'd placed to watch the sunset. "Some international hotel chain wants our recipes for their restaurants." "And?" Nikolai asked, his arm tightening slightly around her. "I turned them down, of course. Some things aren't meant to be scaled." She looked up at him. "The old you would have told me I was making a poor business decision. The old me was missing the point about a lot of things." His fingers traced patterns on her shoulder. "Success isn't always measured in expansion." "Look who's finally learning," she teased. His expression grew serious. "I am learning. Every day with you." They sat in comfortable silence until Nikolai spoke again, his voice thoughtful. 5 years ago, after Victor died, I convinced myself that control was the only way to prevent pain. If I could just predict every outcome, manage every variable." He shook his head. "But you showed me that the most valuable things in life are the ones you can't control or quantify." Dahlia took his hand, studying the flower still embedded in his fingernails, physical evidence of his willingness to embrace Massine's imperfection, vulnerability. "There's something I've been working on," he said, suddenly nervous in a way the confident billionaire rarely allowed himself to be. "A project of sorts." He retrieved a folder from beside the bench and handed it to her. Inside were architectural plans for a culinary school in Lagos, designed to honor her grandmother's legacy. The name on the building plans read, Oka for Vasiliv, Culinary Academy. It's just a concept, he added quickly. We would develop it together, of course, and only if you want to. Tears filled Dahlia's eyes as she traced the lines of the building, imagining the possibilities. It's perfect, as twilight settled over. Berlin, they began planning their future, not with Nikolai's precise calculations or Dahlia's intuitive approach, but with something new they'd created together, a recipe that balanced precision with passion, ambition with joy, and above all, the courage to remain open to life's most unpredictable ingredients. In the end, they had each given the other what they needed most. She had melted the walls around his heart, and he had built a foundation beneath her dreams. Together, they'd proven that the most satisfying creations often come from the most unexpected combinations.